Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Melanie Cassar, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Vaughan Rickson. This evening's Last Post ceremony will commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Perit Ceylon massacre. On the 22nd of January 1942, while hundreds of their comrades made their escape to avoid capture, 110 Australians and 35 men from the 45th Indian Brigade, who were mostly wounded, were taken prisoner by the advancing Japanese forces. Only 3 Australians survived the ensuing massacre of those who were captured. Shortly, we will tell the story of Lieutenant Arthur Hugh Tibbitts, who was among those men killed at Perit Ceylon. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Club Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Arthur Hugh Sinclair Tibbitts. Arthur was born in Melbourne on the 15th of May 1916, the only son of Arthur Patton and Grace Evelyn Tibbitts. He had two older sisters, Marjorie and Phyllis. Little else is known about Arthur's early life. He grew up in Melbourne and attended Ivanhoe Grammar School in the city's eastern suburbs, near the family home in Kew. After school, Arthur gained employment as a clerk, and in 1937 he joined the Citizens Forces and served a year with 2nd Division's Army Service Corps. The following year, he joined the 6th Infantry Battalion. With the outbreak of war in September 1939, Arthur was called on for war service and was promoted to corporal the following month. By the end of the year, Arthur's obvious talent for leading men saw him made provisional lieutenant. In June 1941, he was seconded for service with the Australian Imperial Force. He was formally appointed lieutenant and allotted to the new 8th Division's 2nd 29th Battalion. On the 19th of July 1941, Arthur married Marion Mary Hoban at Christchurch, Hawthorn, and as it turned out, just 12 days before he was sent overseas. On the 31st, the battalion boarded the troop ship Mani Vincent Aldegonde in Melbourne, bound for active service. Tensions were rising with Japan, and his unit was sent to Malaya. They arrived in Singapore a few weeks later and then were stationed in southern Malaya. There, they continued training and began preparing to fight in jungle conditions. Within just 4 months of their arrival, Japan entered the war and began landing on the north coast of Malaya in the early hours of the 8th of December 1941. They quickly swept through the countryside, outnumbering and outmanoeuvring Allied units who were forced into a fighting withdrawal. A week later, the Japanese were pressing into southern Malaya, where the 2nd 29th would soon be in action against them. Along with other units, the 2nd 29th fought the Japanese to a standstill at Bakri, but they were outnumbered and outflanked and were soon forced to withdraw. Their retreat was stopped at the Parat Sulong Bridge, and unable to break through, the decision was made to split up into small groups, try to evade the enemy positions and make it back to friendly lines. But not all were capable of moving. 110 Australians and 35 men from the 45th Indian Brigade were left behind, mostly wounded. Several officers, including Lieutenants Hackney and Tibbitts and Captain Snelling of the 2nd 19th, stayed behind. During the 22nd of January, while hundreds of their comrades made their escape, Hackney kept up automatic fire from a Bren gun positioned beneath a truck. At one stage, Tibbitts braved enemy fire to go out and find more magazines for the Bren in order to keep the Japanese at bay, buying more time for their comrades to get away. But by around 2:30 p.m, with the ammunition all gone, the game was up. When the firing ceased, the Japanese cautiously approached and soon began gathering up the wounded Australians and Indians. All were very roughly handled, punched, kicked, prodded with bayonets and bashed with rifle butts. Those unable to move or moving too slowly were bayoneted or shot dead. The survivors were herded together and stripped naked before being shoved into a nearby shed. The suffering and misery were immense, but worse was to come. Passing by, the Japanese divisional commander stopped briefly and contemptuously ordered the prisoners to be disposed of. Just on dusk, they were roped together like animals and roughly led towards a nearby riverbank. Tibbitts tried in vain to help his friend Hackney along, but he could not walk, nor could Captain Snelling, so both he and Hackney were clubbed until both lay motionless, apparently dead. The rest, including Tibbitts, continued under a rain of blows towards a scrubby clearing by the river. There they were brutally gunned down en masse. Petrol was then poured over the mass of writhing, moaning bodies, some still alive, and they were set alight. Once the flames and screams had died away, it is said the Japanese also drove trucks back and forth over the remains. Only 3 Australians survived the massacre, one being Lieutenant Hackney, who for many hours feigned death and in a feat of miraculous endurance, including years as a prisoner of war, lived to tell the story. But among those murdered was his comrade in arms and friend, Lieutenant Arthur Tibbitts. He was 25 years old. The true story of the massacre at Paratsulong did not fully emerge until after the war. The remains of those murdered were never recovered and were probably washed away over time as the river regularly flooded. Tibbitts and the others therefore have no known grave, so they are commemorated on the memorial at Kranji War Cemetery in Singapore. Their names are also listed on the roll of honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Arthur Hugh Sinclair Tibbitts, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
Age shall not weary them. They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, we thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We appreciate your visit despite the challenges posed by COVID and wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.